Hello, this is the Ramblings of a Disfine Podcast for Saturday, August 6th, I think, 2016. As of this recording, Sierra is still missing. So I got a bit of a rant today. I was planning on it, and then I just spent half an hour pulling burrs out of my shirt after mowing the lawn, and that really didn't put me in a good mood. So just as well I had a rant planned. But we watched the Olympics last night, specifically the opening ceremony. Broadcast on NBC here in the States. And as time has gone on, I've never really been happy with NBC's coverage. If you don't get to see it, they always got to turn it. The problem with NBC is they think it's news. They treat it like it's a news story. And they got to build all these human interest stories out of it. We just want to watch the freaking sports. And or whatever the event might be. And so last night was the opening ceremony. And NBC was just freaking ridiculous. I was just reading an article. There's a lot of furor about this online, and I posted something about it last night on Facebook as well. But people were comparing it to the Super Bowl as far as how many ads were shown. And I disagree. I think it exceeded the Super Bowl as far as the number of ads. Because typically in a football game, you aren't getting an ad and then 5 minutes later you're getting another set of ads. Unless because they predominantly do ads during a break in the action. They just scored a touchdown. The ball changes hands, so teams have got to come off and come on. That's where they usually tend to stick the commercials. They just don't insert a commercial break in the middle of a drive just because it's time for a commercial. Yeah, I think they do that sometimes, but not very often. But this was ridiculous last night. They would come back and they would do a commercial break, and they would come back and they would literally do like 5 minutes worth of content. And then they go off for another commercial break. It was just ridiculous. And it wasn't like they'd had time to really make some well-edited synopsis of the Olympics, of the opening ceremonies, because Brazil's only an hour ahead of us here in the Eastern Time Zone. So they didn't have a lot of time to do, slicing and dicing and splicing. There's something you don't see every day, an Alaska plate. But, so it was aggravating because you watch a little bit of it and then more commercials. And they weren't like short one commercial breaks. I mean, the commercial breaks themselves were probably 5 minutes long because you had 4 or 5 every freaking time. But then we realized, because we were interacting on Facebook with the daughter, that we had an option. There is one. There is a definite perk to living here in the Metro Detroit area, and that is we get access to Canadian television. Specifically Channel 9 out of Windsor, CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company. And for a good number of years, they had the Olympics contract. And that was very nice, because if you didn't like to watch NBC's coverage, you could watch their coverage. And but they lost the contract, and so some other Canadian company got it, and we didn't have access to that because, I don't know, they didn't have a franchise in the Windsor area, or is this that our cable didn't carry it, whatever. But so they lost that. But it turns out they got it back. So about midway through, it was probably, because their coverage started at 7:30. Now there wasn't, even though that was probably the because I think the opening ceremonies was supposed to start at 7:30 local time, so it had been an hour. They still blew a half an hour farting around with stories, fluff, things that they felt they had to talk about that you wanted to listen to. So the actual watching of the ceremony didn't start until after 8 o'clock. And it wasn't right on the dot at 8 either. I think it was like 10 after or something. And they went clear to after midnight. It sounds like they got done about 12:15. Now, we weren't up that late because we switched to CBC. And CBC was showing it, and I don't know if it was pure live, and I don't know that they didn't cut some bits out of it here or there. And they did go to commercial break, but they did like reasonable commercial breaks. They weren't doing it, 5 by 5. And to be fair, NBC wasn't doing that all the time, but they did it enough that I noticed, and it began to piss me off. So I have a feeling we're going to be watching a lot of Olympics on CBC. We'll watch some on NBC. The wife had it on it. Because CBC doesn't necessarily cover it all the time. The wife had, when I left, the wife had NBC on. They were doing a cycling race. But it's just, I just show us the freaking Olympics. We don't need all the personal interest stories. We don't need, this isn't the freaking Super Bowl. And these weren't like special Super Bowl ads. They were just normal run-of-the-mill ads that we've seen 8 billion times. It's frustrating to me because, I believe that, from what I remember, that ratings for the Olympics have declined fairly steadily over the last few Olympics. A lot of people complain about how NBC does things, but yet it's like, they're like, frack you. We know what we're doing. We're the professionals. Trust us. You don't know what you're talking about. We're the professionals. And we'll do what we want to do because we know that's the right way to do it. Morons. Anyway, that's what I'm talking about today, or thinking about today. I will be back on Monday. And I'll be talking to you about something not quite so ranty then. So, until then, be seeing you.